The wind howled across the rocky surface of Kepler 452 bits, throwing tiny sharp stones against the research station's reinforced windows. Inside, Daehin Kim stood perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the digital display, showing the latest planetary scan results. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Daehin adjusted his thermal suit, the soft hum of its climate control system breaking the tense silence of the research station. Outside, the landscape looked like a nightmare version of Earth. Rocky, cold, with patches of strange mineral formations that seemed to shimmer and change color when hit by the planet's weak sunlight. He had been on this mission for 8 months, and every day felt like a battle against the unknown. The research station, a small dome-like structure barely large enough to house 6 people, was humanity's furthest exploration point. Located on a planet 1,400 light-years from Earth, it represented the cutting edge of human space exploration. Daehin tapped the screen again. The readings made no sense. According to the sensor data, there was a massive liquid formation just 3 kilometers from the base. But that was impossible. The planet's average temperature was negative 38 degrees Celsius. No liquid could exist in these conditions. He called out to his colleague, Yura. "Come look at this." Yura Pak entered the control room, her dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. She was the team's quantum physicist, known for her ability to solve impossible problems. "What is it?" she asked, moving closer to the screen. Daehin pointed at the display. The sensors showed a massive blue-green area spreading across approximately 12 square kilometers. It moved. It actually moved, shifting and changing shape like something alive. "That's not possible," Yura muttered, her fingers flying across the secondary control panel. She ran multiple scans, checked and rechecked the data. Each scan returned the same impossible result: a liquid formation, on a planet where no liquid should exist. "We need to investigate," Daehin said, his voice steady but excited. His hand was already reaching for the exploration gear: thermal suits, sample collection kits, and portable scanning equipment. Yura looked hesitant. "It could be dangerous. Our sensors can't even determine what that substance is." Daehin smiled. This was why he became a researcher. The unknown wasn't something to fear. It was something to understand. "We've come 1,400 light-years from Earth. We're not going to stop now because of a little uncertainty." Within an hour, they were preparing the exploration rover. It was a robust vehicle designed to handle the harshest planetary conditions, with thick treads and multiple sensor arrays. Daehin did one final equipment check, while Yura programmed the rover's safety protocols. The rest of the research team watched from the station's observation deck. Some looked worried, others curious. Space exploration was always a mix of excitement and fear, and this moment captured that perfectly. As the rover's doors sealed and the vehicle began its journey across the rocky terrain, no one could predict what they would discover. The blue-green formation waited, silent and mysterious, holding secrets that would soon change everything humans thought they knew about life in the universe. Daehin looked out the rover's reinforced window. Whatever was out there, they were going to find it. And nothing was going to stop them. The rover crawled slowly across the rocky surface of Kepler 452 bits, its heavy treads crunching against frozen mineral deposits. Inside, Daehin and Yura watched the external cameras with growing excitement and confusion. The blue-green formation grew larger with each passing minute. It wasn't like any liquid they had ever seen before. Sometimes it looked solid, then suddenly shifted to something that seemed almost transparent. Tiny ripples moved across its surface, but there was no wind to cause them. "Are you seeing this?" Yura whispered, her hand hovering over the main sensor panel. Daehin nodded. The formation defied every scientific principle they knew. It didn't behave like water, or mercury, or any known substance. When the rover's lights hit its surface, the liquid seemed to shimmer and change color, from deep blue to bright green, then to a strange, silvery tone that hurt their eyes to look at. "Stop the rover," Daehin said suddenly. I want to take a sample. Yura looked worried. We should wait. Run more scans first. But Dahan was already preparing the external sampling arm. It was a delicate piece of equipment designed to collect materials from alien environments without contamination. With careful movements, he guided the arm towards the liquid's edge. The moment the sampling tool touched the surface, something unexpected happened. The liquid moved. Not just a simple ripple or wave. It actually pulled away from the sampling arm, as if it was alive and aware of the intrusion. Dahan and Yura stared in shock. Did you see that? Dahan asked, his voice barely a whisper. Yura's fingers flew across the computer panel, capturing every single moment of the interaction. It's impossible, she muttered. Liquids don't move like that. They don't avoid contact. The formation seemed to pulse. The color changed again, this time to a deep purple that felt almost like a warning. Dahan felt a chill run down his spine. Something was watching them. Something was aware. We need to collect more data, he said, trying to sound calm. They spent the next 2 hours running every possible scan and test. The liquid, if you could call it that, continued to behave in ways that broke all known scientific understanding. It seemed to respond to their presence, changing shape and color based on the rover's movements. It's like it's curious about us, Yura said, her scientific skepticism slowly giving way to wonder. Dahan agreed. The formation wasn't just a substance. It felt like something more, something intelligent. As the weak sunlight of Kepler 452 bits began to fade, casting long shadows across the alien landscape, the blue-green formation continued to move. Sometimes it would stretch out, almost like a hand reaching towards the rover. Other times it would contract, pulling back as if scared. We can't bring this data back to the base, Yura said suddenly. They'll think we're crazy. Dahan smiled. Maybe we are crazy, but we're also the first humans to see something like this. The rover's communication system crackled. Back at the research station, the other team members were demanding updates, but Dahan and Yura remained silent, watching the mysterious liquid that seemed to be watching them right back. Something big was happening, something that would change everything humans thought they knew about life in the universe. And they were right in the middle of it. The night on Kepler 452 bits was unlike anything Dahan had ever experienced. Darkness wasn't just the absence of light here. It was alive with strange vibrations that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Back in the research station, Dahan sat alone in the main lab. The recordings from the rover played on endless repeat. Something about the liquid formation was eating away at his thoughts. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Yura entered the room, her eyes red from hours of analysis. I've never seen anything like this, she said, dropping a thick folder of data onto the table. Dahan's mind drifted to his past. 10 years ago, he had lost his entire family in a space exploration accident, a failed mission that claimed the lives of his wife and young daughter. Those memories had driven him to become one of the most dedicated researchers in the space exploration program. Listen, he said suddenly, pointing to the audio recordings. At first, there was nothing. Just the usual background noise of the planetary environment. But then, a strange pattern emerged. Soft, rhythmic vibrations that seemed to pulse with a strange kind of intelligence. Yura leaned closer. Those aren't random, she whispered. The vibrations started to form a pattern. Not quite a language, but something more fundamental. It was like listening to the heartbeat of something massive and alive. Suddenly, the station's main computer screen flickered. Lines of data began to stream across it, complex mathematical sequences that made no immediate sense, but they were organized, deliberate. It's communicating, Dahan said, his voice a mix of excitement and fear. Yura began to work frantically, her fingers flying across the keyboard. She was building a translation matrix, trying to make sense of the strange signals. It was like solving the most complex puzzle in human history. Hours passed. The vibrations continued, growing more complex with each passing moment. The liquid formation, now visible on their long-range sensors, seemed to pulse in sync with the sounds. "It's not just a liquid," Yura said finally. "It's an ecosystem. No, more than that. It's a collective intelligence." Daehan remembered the stories his grandmother used to tell him about ancient Korean myths, of spirits that lived in rivers and mountains, of intelligent forces that humans couldn't understand. This felt like more than just a scientific discovery. It felt like first contact. The computer screen changed. The mathematical sequences gave way to something else, a series of images that seemed to flow like water, landscapes from different worlds, glimpses of civilizations long gone, moments of creation and destruction. "It's showing us something," Daehan whispered. The entire research station seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the alien landscape of Kepler 452 bits stretched out under the weak starlight. The blue-green formation continued to move, to pulse, to communicate. Something was trying to tell them something. Something ancient. Something that had been waiting. And humanity was about to listen. Daehan looked at Yura. She looked back. In that moment, they both knew nothing would ever be the same again. The universe had just opened its mouth, and it was speaking directly to them. The world back on Earth was about to change forever. News of the strange discovery traveled fast. Within hours of the initial communication, every major research center and government agency was buzzing with excitement and fear. Daehan and Yura found themselves at the center of something much bigger than their small research station. "We're not alone," Daehan told the video conference of global scientific leaders. "And this isn't just another alien contact. This is something completely different." The liquid formation, which they had started calling the collective, began to share information. But it wasn't like any data transfer humans had ever seen before. It was more like a living memory, a stream of experiences that flowed through their computer systems. Glimpses of other civilizations appeared on their screens. Alien worlds with strange geometries. Societies that had risen and fallen. Civilizations that had reached incredible technological heights only to destroy themselves. "We've been watching," the collective communicated, not through words, but through a complex series of mathematical patterns and emotional impressions. Humans are different. Yura worked day and night to understand the communication. The collective showed them how it had observed countless species across the galaxy. Most civilizations destroyed themselves before they could truly understand the universe. They were trapped by their own limitations, by fear, by conflict, by inability to see beyond their own small worlds. But humans were different. The collective was fascinated by human emotions, by their ability to hope, to dream, to imagine possibilities that seemed impossible. Where other species saw barriers, humans saw challenges to overcome. Daehan remembered his personal history. The loss of his family had nearly destroyed him. But instead of giving up, he had channeled his pain into exploration, into understanding, into pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. The research station became a hub of incredible discoveries. The collective began to show them how matter could be manipulated at a molecular level, how energy could be transformed in ways no human scientist had ever imagined. "You feel," the collective communicated. "Other species calculate. You dream. Other species limit." It was a compliment unlike any other. The collective had watched thousands of civilizations, and humans were something special. Yura discovered that the liquid formation could actually change its molecular structure based on emotional input. When Daehan spoke about his hopes for humanity, the formation would shimmer and change, creating complex patterns that seemed to dance with possibility. "We can help you," the collective suggested, "but the choice must be yours." The implications were massive. This wasn't just a scientific discovery. This was a turning point for human civilization. The research team realized they were standing at the edge of something incredible. Outside the station, the alien landscape of Kepler 452 bits continued its strange existence. The weak sunlight cast long shadows across rocky terrain, but something had changed. The planet no longer felt alien. It felt like a doorway. A doorway to something much larger. Daehan looked at Yura. She looked back. They both knew nothing would ever be the same again. Humanity was about to take its first real step into a much larger universe, and the journey was just beginning. The world held its breath. News of the collective spread like wildfire. Some people were terrified. Some were excited. Most were simply confused. Daehan and Yura found themselves at the center of the biggest moment in human history. The collective began to share technology that seemed like magic. They showed how matter could be reshaped at the most basic level. A simple metal cube could become anything. A medical device, a communication tool, a power source. The rules of physics seemed to bend and break. We have waited, the collective communicated, for a species that could understand. In the research station, Daehan watched as Yura worked to translate the incredible information. Their computer systems were filled with diagrams, mathematical equations, and strange energy patterns that seemed to pulse with life. "This is more than technology," Yura said one morning. "This is like a language of creation." The ethical debate began almost immediately. Some world leaders wanted to keep the discovery secret. Others wanted to share it with everyone. Daehan and Yura found themselves caught in the middle of a global argument that would change everything. The collective showed them glimpses of other civilizations, worlds that had risen to incredible heights, only to collapse. Societies that had discovered advanced technologies, but failed to understand the deeper connections of the universe. "Humans are different," the collective repeated. "You feel, you dream, you connect." Daehan thought about his own past. The loss of his family had taught him about connections, about hope, about continuing forward even when everything seemed impossible. The first test came quickly. The collective offered humanity a choice, a way to expand human understanding beyond anything they had ever imagined. But it would change everything, forever. "We can help you transform," the collective communicated. "But the choice must be yours." The technology they showed was beyond anything humans had ever seen. Ways to manipulate energy, to understand the deepest connections of the universe. Methods of communication that went beyond words, beyond thought. Yura worked day and night, trying to understand. The collective wasn't just offering technology. They were offering a completely new way of existing. The research station became a hub of incredible activity. Scientists from around the world came to see the discovery. Military leaders watched carefully. Government officials debated endlessly. But Daehan and Yura knew something the others didn't. This wasn't just a technological discovery. This was an invitation to something much larger. "We can help you see," the collective said, "but you must choose to look." Outside, the alien landscape of Kepler 452 bits continued its strange existence. The blue-green formation that had started everything continued to move, to pulse, to communicate. Humanity stood at a crossroads, a moment of incredible possibility. The choice was simple, but nothing about it was easy. Daehan looked at Yura. She looked back. In that moment, they both understood that everything was about to change. The universe was waiting, and humanity would have to decide if it was ready to answer. The history of the universe unfolded like a strange, terrible dream. The collective began to show Daehan and Yura the truth about galactic civilizations. It wasn't a story of hope. It was a story of failure. Imagine thousands of alien civilizations, each one believing they were special, each one thinking they would be the ones to unlock the universe's greatest secrets. But one by one, they fell. Some destroyed themselves with weapons that could shatter planets. Others collapsed from within, their societies eaten away by fear and mistrust. Some simply stopped growing, trapped by their own limitations. "We have watched," the collective communicated. The images were brutal. Worlds burning, civilizations crumbling, entire species vanishing in moments of terrible destruction. Daehan watched in silence. The images showed civilizations that had reached incredible technological heights. They could manipulate energy, create massive structures, travel between stars. But they all failed in one crucial way. They couldn't connect. The collective showed how most species saw the universe as something to be conquered. Humans were different. Humans saw the universe as something to be understood, to be explored, to be shared. Yura noticed something strange in the images. In every civilization's final moments, there was a point of choice, a moment when they could have changed everything. But fear always won. Emotions are not weakness, the collective explained. They are your greatest strength. The research station felt different now. It wasn't just a place of scientific discovery anymore. It was a bridge between humanity and something much larger. Daehan remembered his own pain. The loss of his family had nearly destroyed him. But instead of giving up, he had chosen to explore, to understand, to hope. The collective showed more. Civilizations that had discovered incredible technologies, but failed to use them wisely. Species that could manipulate matter but couldn't understand compassion. Societies that could travel between stars but couldn't talk to their own neighbors. You are different, the collective repeated. The images continued. Worlds that had solved technological challenges but lost their ability to dream. Societies that became so perfect they stopped growing. Civilizations that became machines, losing what made them alive. Humans, the collective explained, had something special. The ability to feel, to hope, to imagine possibilities that seemed impossible. Outside, the alien landscape of Kepler 452 bits continued its strange existence. The blue-green formation pulsed with life, with knowledge, with possibility. Yura worked to understand. The collective wasn't just sharing information. They were offering a test, a challenge to humanity. We have waited. They communicated. We have watched. We have hoped. Daehan looked at the images of fallen civilizations. Each one had a moment of choice, a chance to become something more. Most had failed. Would humans be different? The universe held its breath, waiting, hoping, watching. The world erupted into chaos. News of the collective spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Social media exploded. News channels ran endless reports. Governments scrambled to understand what was happening. Daehan and Yura found themselves at the center of a global storm. They were no longer just researchers. They were now the bridge between humanity and something completely unknown. The collective began its test. It wasn't a test of technology. It wasn't a test of intelligence. It was a test of something much harder to measure. First, they created a global challenge. Every communication system on Earth suddenly displayed the same message, a complex scenario that required global cooperation to solve. Some countries wanted to keep the information secret. Others wanted to share it immediately. Political leaders argued. Scientists debated. Military commanders prepared for potential threats. The scenario was simple but impossible. A global problem that could only be solved if every single nation worked together. No exceptions, no hidden agendas. Daehan watched as the world struggled. Old conflicts resurfaced. Old hatreds threatened to destroy everything. But something else was happening too. People started to connect. Scientists from countries that had been enemies for decades began to talk. They shared information. They worked together. Social media became a place of real communication, not just argument. The collective watched. Yura worked to understand the deeper meaning of the test. This wasn't just about solving a problem. This was about showing what humanity could become. Some people panicked. Some people hoped. Some people did both at the same time. The challenge touched every part of human society. Economic systems were tested. Political structures were challenged. People had to choose between old ways of thinking and a new possibility. Governments that had been enemies found themselves working together. Scientists who had competed now collaborated. People who had never spoken to each other began to listen. The research station became a global center of communication. Daehan and Yura worked around the clock, helping to translate and understand the collective's challenge. This is more than a test, Yura said one night. This is a chance to become something more. The world had 72 hours to solve the impossible challenge. As time passed, something strange began to happen. Humanity started to change. Old borders seemed less important. Old fights seemed smaller. People began to see themselves as part of something larger. The collective continued to watch. Outside, the alien landscape of Kepler 452 bits remained unchanged. The blue-green formation pulsed with an ancient intelligence, waiting. Dahan looked at Yura. She looked back. They both knew something important was happening. The universe held its breath. Humanity's moment of choice had arrived. And nothing would ever be the same again. Time stopped. The world changed in a moment that felt both sudden and endless. As the final hours of the collective's challenge passed, something incredible happened. Humanity transformed. It wasn't a physical change, not exactly, but something deep inside human consciousness shifted. People began to see each other differently. The old lines that had separated nations, cultures, and beliefs started to fade. Dahan watched in amazement as the impossible became possible. The collective's challenge had been more than a test. It was an invitation, an opportunity to become something more than what humanity had been before. Scientific breakthroughs happened faster than anyone could track. Problems that had seemed impossible suddenly found solutions. Climate challenges, energy production, medical limitations, everything changed. Yura discovered that the human brain was capable of more than anyone had ever imagined. People began to connect in ways that went beyond language, beyond technology. A new kind of understanding emerged. "We are offering you a choice," the collective communicated. The choice was simple but world-changing. Humanity could expand its consciousness, become part of a larger network of galactic intelligence, but the decision had to be completely voluntary. Some people were afraid. Some were excited. Most were both at the same time. The research station on Kepler 452 bits became the center of everything. Dahan and Yura worked day and night, helping humanity understand the massive transformation happening. The blue-green formation, the collective, pulsed with an ancient intelligence. It showed glimpses of what humanity could become, worlds of possibility, connections beyond imagination. People started to change, not just in how they thought, but in how they felt, how they understood each other. The old barriers of language, culture, and belief began to dissolve. A new kind of human emerged. Not better, not worse, just different. More connected, more understanding, more capable of seeing the larger picture. The collective shared technology that seemed like magic, ways to heal, to understand, to explore. But they made one thing clear. The choice was always humanity's. Dahan thought about his past, the loss of his family, the pain that had driven him to explore. Now he understood. Every experience, every moment of pain and joy, had been preparing humanity for this. Yura worked to translate the incredible information. It wasn't just about technology. It was about understanding, about connection. The world outside the research station looked the same, but everything had changed. Humanity stood at the edge of something incredible. A chance to become part of something larger. A chance to truly understand. A chance to grow. The universe waited. Humanity took a breath and chose to step forward. The first light of a new day broke across Kepler 452 bits. Dahan stood at the window of the research station, watching the alien landscape transform. The blue-green formation, the collective, pulsed with a gentle, rhythmic energy that seemed to breathe with the planet itself. Everything had changed, and yet nothing was truly different. Humanity had made its choice, not a choice of technology or power, but a choice of connection, of understanding, of becoming something more. Yura entered the room, her eyes bright with a new kind of awareness. The transformation wasn't just external. It was happening inside each person. A slow, beautiful awakening. "We are not alone," she said softly. The words meant something different now. The collective had opened a door, not just to other worlds, but to a way of seeing the universe that no human had ever imagined before. It wasn't about conquering. It wasn't about understanding. It was about experiencing. Memories flowed differently now. Dahan could see his past, the loss of his family, his years of research, his deepest pain, not as separate moments, but as connected threads of a larger story. The research station hummed with a new kind of energy. Outside, the alien landscape seemed to pulse with possibility. Humanity had taken its first real step into a much larger universe. Communication had changed. People understood each other in ways that went beyond words, beyond language. A global consciousness was emerging, not by force, but by choice. This is just the beginning, the collective communicated. Dahan thought about all the civilizations that had failed before, the ones that had destroyed themselves, the ones that had never looked beyond their own small worlds. Humans were different. They had chosen to listen, to connect, to grow. The first human colonies beyond Earth were already being planned, not as conquests, not as explorations, but as connections, as ways of understanding the universe more deeply. Yura worked on translating the new knowledge. It wasn't just about technology anymore. It was about a new way of existing, of seeing, of being. The blue-green formation continued to pulse, a living library of universal knowledge, a bridge between what humanity was and what it could become. Dahan remembered his daughter, the child he had lost years ago. Now he understood that loss was just another form of connection, another way of experiencing the universe. Humanity had a choice. They could remain small, or they could become something more. They chose to grow. The research station on Kepler 452 bits stood as a symbol, a place where everything changed, a place where humanity took its first real breath as something more than it had been before. Outside, the alien landscape stretched out, waiting, promising, inviting. The universe was not empty. It was full of possibility, and humanity was finally ready to explore.